Thanks very much for your time, Minister. Can you give us an update on where this operation is at and how many people do you hope to evacuate and repatriate to Australia, including Afghan nationals?
Yeah, well, thanks, Kieran. As you've said there, it's good to see the success of our ADF getting into Kabul, getting their planes on the ground and starting to uplift people out of Kabul in a very difficult circumstance. So we thank everyone involved, including my department in Home Affairs and Foreign Affairs and the defence officials that are doing that work. You can expect to see more flights in coming days. You'll see more people getting out. We are working very hard with international partners to take account of the security situation. The United States, which has troops on the ground, Germany, the UK, others, partners who will work together to secure the airport and make sure we can continue to get out Australians, permanent residents, and of course Afghan nationals, particularly those who've worked for us in Defence or Foreign Affairs, who we know are waiting to come to Australia.
The number that's been referred to is around 600, including Australian citizens and Afghan nationals. Is that about the number you're looking at?
Well, for operational reasons, Kieran, you'll understand I won't go into a specific figure, but we will have multiple planes able to go to Kabul and form an air bridge in partnership with other countries to make sure we can get people out. And we're fully focused on that. And the urgency of that situation is understood by all parts of the Australian government, and we're working hard to get the mission done.
The Prime Minister spoke of 3,000 humanitarian places this year. Will these Afghan nationals that we're evacuating, those who worked as translators, staff in the embassy and so on, will they be included within that 3,000 figure?
Yeah, so today we announced 3,000 humanitarian places inside the existing humanitarian program will be allocated just for Afghanistan. Now, that doesn't take into account those we've already granted a visa to. So to answer your question, Kieran, put another way, the people who've already been granted a visa, if they've worked for us in the Defence Forces, whether as a translator or an interpreter, or they've worked for us in Foreign Affairs, those visas won't count in the new 3,000 allocations. This is on top of Australia's obligations. And Australia is one of the few countries I want to point out, Kieran, that since 2013 has had a program in place every year to take people from Afghanistan who worked for us and helped and served our forces. We had 500 in 2013 come out of Afghanistan and resettle here successfully. But since 2013, that's now at 1,800 people have come to Australia and successfully resettled. We've done that every single year. So this year we'll have more come out under that program, and obviously more we'll evacuate in the coming days. And this 3,000 allocation is a humanitarian allocation on top of that. That of course will mean that we can take account of our international obligations and support the people of Afghanistan, women, girls, children, people who are vulnerable in populations, and of course that will go through this year. Importantly, Kieran, as well, I've allocated a processing priority, so they'll receive a first priority in terms of a humanitarian place, and they'll be processed first by our department. So that will be, of course, a historic figure for Afghanistan in a single year for Australia to take.
Minister, would you envisage that some of that number, the 3,000 refugees, that they would be included within this immediate airlift? Is it possible to expedite the operations such that you might be able to save people now?
Well, Kieran, there's a lot under that. There's the current security environment in Kabul. We have to understand who people are. There is a lot of work being done on that in concert with partners. We have a priority as well, of course, existing Australian citizens who are on the ground, who are in Kabul or in Afghanistan, permanent residents, New Zealand citizens, partner countries, and people we owe an obligation to who helped us, who are Afghan nationals as well. We'll work very hard to get anyone we can out, recognising that there is a limited window in relation to coalition forces remaining on the ground in Afghanistan.
Now, I've had a number of Afghan veterans, Australians who've served in Afghanistan, reach out to me, Minister, in the last 24 hours and raising the plight of some of their mates, Royal Military College Duntroon graduates who have expressed their concern about their safety because they've trained in Australia at the Royal Military College. Are you open to providing a visa? As I understand it, the number's about half a dozen. I think it's 6 who are back in Afghanistan from the RMC Duntroon. Are you open to providing a visa to those individuals who, I'm told, and I've seen the evidence, have been threatened by the Taliban because they trained in Australia?
Yeah, Kieran, we're very conscious of the great risk that people are in all through Afghanistan now, and the Taliban is an evil and murderous regime that has threatened the life and safety of so many people, and they're doing so again. These are the kind of people that we would expect to be applying under the refugee and humanitarian program. I can't speak to specific individuals and cases, but of course we're looking in our program that we've announced today, our 3,000, we want people who have connections with Australia. People who've come and studied at RMC Duntroon, of course, have a connection with Australia. We want to see family members of existing Afghani Australian community members being sponsored. We would like to see, of course, members of vulnerable minorities that have connections with Australia come in through the humanitarian program. So we are looking for these kinds of people to come forward. Sponsorships can be done by people in Australia. They can be done offshore if people can't make the applications themselves. And, you know, I look forward to receiving those, and the government, of course, will process all those applications and do everything we can. It's important to note that people have to meet security, health and character checks, the Australian requirements. The one principle the government will not compromise on is the safety of the Australian people and the safety of Australia. And all that being the case, we do want to see as many people come to Australia from Afghanistan who have a great and existing connection, and that we have an obligation to as well.
There are 2 Afghan cadets, as I understand it, at Duntroon as we speak. Will they be granted visas? Will you look to help their families?
So the government's announced that anyone lawfully here from Afghanistan on a temporary visa will not be asked to leave, or will not have to leave under any circumstance. They will be able to apply under the normal mechanisms for protection. They will not form part of the 3,000 humanitarian allocation. So people who are here, and I understand it's a small cohort, under 100, will be able to apply onshore for protection, and those claims will be assessed in the usual way. And of course they won't be required to leave while those claims are being assessed, and we will grant those visas as required.
How many Afghans are here on temporary protection visas as we speak, and are they all boat people?
Well, Kieran, as I said, so there's a small cohort of people who are here lawfully on temporary protection visas. They may be students, they may be others. They will have the opportunity to apply for protection or other visas in the normal way, and we would expect them to do so. The remainder, as you point out, are already here, boat people or IMAs, and the Prime Minister's been clear and the government's clear that there'll be no change in the policy in relation to IMAs. They have temporary protection visas. They will remain on temporary protection visas.
You can't send them back.
Well, Kieran, the government's policy has been clear since our election in 2013. No one who arrives by boat will permanently be resettled in Australia. That remains our policy, and the Prime Minister has been clear today that there will be no change in our policy.
So where do they go then? Are you still looking for those third country resettlement options? Because, as I said, you can't send them back to the Taliban, surely.
Well, Kieran, that's not even a question. People are here in Australia and have been for many years on a temporary protection visa, and the government has issued a temporary protection visa. But we've been clear from the very beginning that nobody who arrived by boat will be allowed to resettle here. There'll be no change. There'll be no change to that policy. There'll be no permanent settlement. They will remain, and their situation is unchanged.
So, yeah, but just clarifying, are you still looking for those third country options or not?
Well, what you're talking about is people offshore, Kieran, whether they be on Nauru or Manus, and yes, that program continues for third country resettlement. But if you've arrived here by boat and you've been issued with a temporary protection visa, there will be no change in your situation, and you will not resettle permanently in Australia.
Immigration Minister Alex Hawke, I appreciate your time. Thanks.